Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Business Over Brews. Today, we're really excited because we're going to be talking more about human in the loop activities and processes with these AI technologies. As AI tends to do more and more tasks and take more autonomy almost away from us, we really start to worry about what is our agency in this new realm that we're moving into. So today, we're going to talk about co-agency. Stick around. Right, welcome back, everyone. Again, I am joined by Paul. I'm really excited because Paul and I are going to be talking a lot about co-agency. Paul here spends his time designing AI products and bringing those to market. Paul, again, thank you for giving me some time on your weekend today to have another conversation.
Always a pleasure. And this is an interesting.
So
I'm excited.
Absolutely is. I mean, it gets scary. You know, I'm using AI tools. I'm always worried about how much is the machine versus me. I like to think that it's me when I'm building the tools in these machines, but it does bring a lot of concerns up that people have been sharing, of course, as these AI technologies get even stronger. Where is that human in the loop? How much is that human in the loop? And as we break this down, it really brings us into this realm of what is co-agency and how are humans expected to use and continue to use these AI technologies. Would you be able to explain a little bit about co-agency?
Yeah, absolutely. I think actually co-agency, if we take it a few steps back, generally what happens with these kind of innovations, if I look at it from a historical perspective, I am a historian, as you know, Chris.
What I can't remember what I had for dinner yesterday, so I am far from a historian.
You're very much more in current times. You're living the present.
I'm a present and future thinker.
Right. So here it is that when we talk a lot about the technology and how the technology evolves, actually what always happens when technology evolves, humans always we also think about like, how does the role of the human then evolve as well? And sometimes to talk about technology overshadows to talk about, okay, what does it mean to us humans? And if we look at like a few years ago when ChatGPT came out and we went through the Gartner hype cycle, right? We went through the valley of despair and everything where we were talking about like, this AI is going to complement so much of the work we do. We thought about it very much in a one-dimensional way of like, I have my job. How can this thing take over my job? Now, as the technology evolved, we talked about like human in the loop. It's like, oh, so what's probably going to happen is that we have a one-dimensional task as we know it today, and then part of it will be done by AI, but we cannot trust AI fully. So we need to have a human in the loop to create oversight of that AI to make sure it doesn't make mistakes, right? That's been the thinking for the last year or two. And now, in the last few months, we've seen some new technological paradigms come up. And they were mostly triggered by two major steps forward, at least if I would have to pick the top two. I would say, first of all, is agentic AI. So we're now starting to hook up different AI tools for an AI to actually perform tasks. So for the last few years, we looked at AI as something that can create a lot of information, that can summarize a lot of information. And now we're actually looking at an AI as something that can do tasks. That's been a major step forward because it means that we can just have an AI, and the AI has access to a whole bunch of different tools. And let's say you want to book like a train ticket or like a flight, then you can say like, AI, book this flight for me. And the AI can go to like a tool that collects all the available flights. Then it looks at a tool that looks at your schedule maybe, and looks at another tool where your preferences are stored, and another tool where it looks at pricing comparison, another tool that actually books something, a payment tool, all of these different tools. And an AI can turn them all into sequence or do things in parallel to perform a whole string of tasks to ultimately come to an outcome. That is huge. Now, the other big thing that's huge is the invention of MCP. So that's Model Context Protocol. And this is something that I think is going to be a huge deal. Not that people will know what MCP is, in the same way that people don't really know haven't really thought about what USB-C has meant for the world, right? MCP, Model Context Protocol, basically is a standardized way in which you can get an external tool connected to an AI. It used to be before that, if you want to have an AI use an external tool, you'll have to build some kind of integration into an AI. Now there is a standardized protocol for it. So
Well, so what kind of tools would you be talking about? Are we talking about like just data resourcing? Are we talking about additional skills or throughputs?
that's the
What
beauty
kind
of
of
it.
things would we
It
get?
could be anything. Like you can look at like if you have like a if you can hook up like fetching into data storage with MCP. You can hook up like just something on a tool that you provide that you build as a separate company, and you have like some tooling that I don't know makes and where the world we come from like makes content like compliant, right? Like can rewrite content or like a tool that does payment services with MCP, if you have an MCP connector, you just hook it up directly to an API for to an AI. It's comparable to what an API did, REST API did for SaaS technologies. REST API became the standard protocol that allowed different applications to talk to each other. That's what MCP is for AI. It's basically an API for AI, a standardized protocol. And what that allows all of a sudden is that all these models that we work with, they have their own built-in set of tools that they use, all kind of different tasks that they can perform. Now this opens up a whole ecosystem to every AI to hook up any kind of tool. So what I'm predicting for the future is that we're going to see a whole ecosystem of AI tools that can all hook into whatever AI orchestration tools you have, and it just all brings it together. That means a lot. Let me give you one good example of this. It means that if you look at just the MarTech landscape, how many tools do you use just in marketing with all different user interfaces, right? It's crazy. Like you have to log into so many different things. Companies like 1Password have become big because you have 50 tools to log into and you don't want to have the same password and you can't remember them all, right? What this allows you to do, allows us all to do, where we can get to, is that a lot of these interfaces that you currently have might no longer be necessary because you could have a lot of the process that you would do in there be done automatically by AI in the background, hooked up via these MCP protocols, and then get these tasks done. So this
You
is where we're
know,
going to start talking about co-agency. So human in the loop is the idea of like, I have a task that I do, and I'm going to give part of that task to the AI, and I'm going to give oversight over that task. AI has evolved, and these models are evolving. The reasoning models that are out there are just increasingly amazing. So I'm just going to expect that the accuracy of these models and the predictability is going to be better and better. That means that we can let AI do a lot more. We actually can allow AI to take many more tasks. We don't have to control. If you have a string of tasks, like a supply chain almost of tasks, you can have like 10 steps in it, right? In a human in the loop setting, you would assume that every task is also still has a human involved to make sure that every step gets done correctly. With co-agency, you're basically looking at yourself as a human, like I am just one step of this entire chain, and some parts are completely done by AI, but some parts are still a human. And so the idea is that you don't need oversight on every step of the chain. You can say, like, for example, like have the AI do a whole bunch of things, and when it's finally done with doing all that stuff, you can still say, like, this is when I approve it and I do something with it, and then the AI can do stuff further. So instead of being completely involved, always having oversight, co-agency is much more from the perspective of you as a human are actually also just a tool in the chain alongside many AI that does all of these different tasks.
you know what? I'm thinking about the repercussions of these. And first of all, what first thing that pops into my head is it's so interesting to see how much these AI technologies are acting much like humans. Before we came into this conversation, you shared with me a name to look into, which was Adam Smith, and I think it was the theory of divination. Divination? Not
Not
divination.
divination. That would be religion. The division of labor
Division of labor. Sorry, divination is more about
and the
magic
labor
and
theory of value.
yes, so the labor theory of value and the idea of how much more efficient somebody becomes by Instead of having one person do 10 different tasks, have 10 people do one task each, and you exponentially grow the productivity of that group. And what cracks me up is how that is such a human thing, like in an assembly line, to be able to continue to do a repetitive task and get something completed, and how that actually transitions over into these AI tools, that there are specific tools that are great for specific things, regardless of what kind of resourcing it may or may not have with it. And of course, that also has technological limitations like context windows in the way that these models are trained. But to see that theory still transition over now into this technology, it's kind of like almost like, what is it? Art, life imitating art, kind of, you know what I mean?
It is, and it is definitely. This is a very natural progression. This is co-agency is something that indeed comes from division of labor, where we say like everybody plays their own role in this assembly line, and the fact that now maybe the person standing next to you is not a person but is a computer. This is also not new. Like,
Yeah.
if you ever like some fascinating documentaries on, for example, the Volkswagen factory in Wolfsburg, Germany, where it's mostly robots actually putting these entire cars together. It's fascinating. And it is, yes, over time, certain tasks have been given more and more to robots. Now, that is much more human in the loopy because every robot has some
Of
level of
course.
oversight and has mechanics and all of that. But what we're looking at now is that in tasks that if you have an assembly chain like that, you just need to make sure that the final end product is fine. Which, and I think that's the next conversation for us to have, is about like, is also where vibe coding comes from, where like I am not
Yeah.
I am not going to look at every single line of code. I'm just going to look if the output does what it does, and if that does what it
And
does,
then guide it to
I'm
make
fine,
changes. Yeah.
right? And it's a revolutionary way of thinking, and it's going to change the way that we think about AI, change the way that we work with AI. It means, and here's my big takeaway for anybody who hasn't done this yet, is that whatever job you currently have, take the time, go on whatever your AI is currently, Gemini, ChatGPT, Grok, whatever it
Yeah.
is, Perplexity, go and ask how your job could be disrupted by AI, or like look at a bigger picture, like what kind of system, what kind of assembly line are you part of, and what can we
Yeah.
replace? And get smart with AI. Don't think that it will go away. Pick up your phone, work with it, get comfortable around it, because your world will change, and this is a huge opportunity right now to get wise and to get good with AI so that you're prepared for the future.
As we talk about co-agency too, first of all, great advice. Highly recommend go find out what can be assisted by AI so you know about it ahead of time before it happens to you. The other side is co-agency is great when it comes from a productivity standpoint, from a business to business use case, right? Or if I'm an employee working for a business. But co-agency is starting to spill over into the consumer world, right? So if you look at something like OpenAI's, is it Operator, the Operator model that they release where it can take actual actions, click buttons on websites and so forth. There's now a world where, much like I can ask my Alexa, order me, 50 blankets, or something, and it will go do that. We're now getting to a point where I can, oh, wow, it actually heard me. I'm getting to a point where where you can turn around and say, order me a sandwich from this business and have it delivered at 2 o'clock. And now it will have the ability to go and open up an application like Grubhub, make that order, process that order, pay for that order, and have your food delivered, which is great. But now when you look at the other side of that, of the consumer journey, so many of these businesses are relying off of that user experience, that human user experience, to generate ad revenue, run sponsored ads. There's so much that's required in that. And now they have to consider, are we going to start building interfaces for both human and computer consumption? What happens when computer consumption overtakes human consumption? What happens when we can't run the ads or get the impressions that we need, that we actually count a lot of our revenue off of? This really disrupts that marketplace through and through as these co-agent experiences expand, not only in the business, in the B2B world, but in the consumer side world.
This is true. Well, the good news is that consumer products will still be consumed by consumers. And how I know this is because Gemini has not raided my fridge yet. Uh, yet.
Yeah,
But
yeah, you don't know that
the
yet.
other development in this space from the last few weeks is a company called Emergence AI is doing this. Um, is the for AI agents to build new AI agents,
Yes.
which is kind of like what you're saying is that an AI agent, what they've done is like an AI has all of these tools at its disposal, and now via MCP, even more. Um, so then an AI, when it needs to do a task, it first evaluates all the tools it has at its disposal, all the services and tools, and then it might say like, I don't have this tool yet at my disposal. I'm going to build it. And then an AI codes a new AI or that service or whatever it needs, codes it themselves, creates it, runs it, tests it, and uses it to perform a task. So you get an AI creating AI, and it's a beautiful concept from just a theoretical. It's amazing. Um, this is also where like there's a lot of discussion around where are the boundaries of the system, and yes, emergence
Yeah.
has a lot to say about that. But it does mean that a lot of the things that we like now we do, oh, we need to buy this software to do that, or we need to buy this software to do that. There is a lot, especially if you have software that's relatively light and doesn't do many complex things. AI can just put it together. And yes, that means that you can start seeing that in your sales when you sell this kind of software. That's indeed the market we're going to. So yes, we are very much looking at an AI kill zone out there, and you
Would
do not want to be part of that. And if you are
well, which is
in that,
scary.
you got to be either turn your tool, create an MCP a connector with your tool, because then your tool becomes available to an AI. Make it available. These are ways to do it. And then the question
You
becomes
know,
like, if you have all of these tools available, will we have AI basically paying for a service instead of coding it itself? Who
yeah.
knows?
Well, so that it brings in another, I mean, granted concern. We're in the wild west of AI tools and technologies.
100%.
Once you start having artificial intelligence, building new tools and solutions for, using artificial intelligence, at what point then does a true winner emerge that can be used for every other good use case of AI if these tools can self replicate or self heal in a way? And really, the true value comes down into it's almost back to big data. Having swaths of data is the value to have these tools to connect to rather than having the advanced AI technologies themselves, because it almost seems like now we're at a race to the bottom.
That's a really good shout. That this is it's interesting because we're back to where we were. Like, I remember saying this like 15, 20 years ago, when we were saying like the gold you have. There's two kinds of gold you have in a company, which is data and its patents. Um,
Yeah.
the patent right is going to be very interesting, as AI might just take ideas that you had and just code it. So that's going to be an interesting area to look into. If this AI can create their own tools, are they breaking
Yeah.
patent law? And then secondly, indeed,
Yeah.
data is something. AI doesn't have data, and AI doesn't have experience. AI can
Yeah.
synthesize data. You can have synthetic data if you want to test stuff. But if you want to have real data to make decisions on, if you have the data, you got the access to the gold mine.
Yep. Well, here's a random prediction that I have. I believe that in the next 10 years to 15 years, we're going to see a lot less soups available at the supermarket. And here's why. As more agency gets themselves, or more co agency gets themselves into these consumer grade products, I remember reading somewhere that a significant percentage of canned soup sales come from people coming to the grocery store and looking at the soups in the aisle and purposely not having them alphabetized. So you have to look at every single one of them. So you can't say, I just want, chicken noodle and know where that is. It's the exposure to finding all of the other soups that tends to get people to buy more soups. But if we're getting into a position where we almost had this before, but screens have been pulled out of refrigerators. But there was a goal where a refrigerator would be smart enough to know the products that are in it, or a cabinet would know what kind of non perishables are in it. It will identify those SKUs, understand the quantity available left, and then order food for you without having to talk to a human or leave your home. That's going to completely disrupt how additional products are bought based on consumers physically seeing them when they're looking for the main product they're looking for. Movies are a great example. How streaming has almost ruined the second or straight to DVD movie market. You used to go to Blockbuster or one of these other movie rental stores, and you'd go there and you'd go find the movie you want, the blockbuster that's out that weekend, and it's not available. So what do? You slump around the place looking for some movie you think you want to see. And all of that experience is gone.
It's yeah, co-agency and agentic AI definitely creates a world like that. But again, it's transformational, right?
True.
The back to the example of the horses and the cars. Henry Ford said, right? If I ask my customer to
Yeah.
get a faster horse, the car basically disrupted the horse market, if you will. Like
Yep.
the transportation industry moved from animals to machines. And everybody who worked in horses and knew everything about horses, a lot of their knowledge became no longer as relevant, or at least was not needed at such a massive scale anymore. It didn't go fully away because there's definitely a very vibrant industry of people doing a lot of stuff with horses. I live in Texas, horses are everywhere, and it's definitely a big industry, but it's not as big as the car industry. And the same thing,
Yep.
like you said,
Nope,
for
that's true.
you can what you just said, the example of canned soup. It brings into question, like, well, will supermarkets disappear? Will Blockbuster or like GameStop or like any of these, like, will they fully disappear? And the answer is their purpose changes. I think a lot of the
Yeah.
purposes for these kind of places, there will be some practical things where, like, maybe you can order online, but it's not immediately available. I'm going to start cooking in an hour and just need to go grab something at the supermarket. Sure. But there's also the social aspect. Like the general
Yeah.
shopping street, main streets are changing to become more social places than shopping places. There are clothing stores that give you coffee. Like this is we crave social interaction, and I think that's the reason for us more to get out of the house than to run errands. Sure, there will be things, but everything that you need to run out of the house for that you didn't want to run out of the house for, yeah, that's all ready to be disrupted, and agentic AI will definitely play a role in a lot of that. Although some things are just still not possible. Like my car is still not self-driving enough to go to the store, or to go to the mechanic to get to get a new, like, I don't know, safety inspection. Like that stuff, we're far away from that. That's probably not going to happen anytime soon.
What
But
do you mean? Throw on cruise control, call it a day. I think you're just not brave enough to let it
this
do
might
its
be the
own thing.
case, but I am brave enough, like already still now, like we order our groceries via the app and we just pick it up. We just go to the supermarket, we park the car, and someone pops up and just drops it all in the car because those are our weekly big groceries. Do we still go to the grocery store twice a week more? Yes, for items forgotten, or you know what, sometimes just to get out of the house. And
Yep.
that's also an industry that has gaps in it. People
Yep.
don't want to always sit at home. People also
No.
want to get out of the house, but for the right things. As long as I need to go out of the house to just get out of the house and just, well, find a reason, go to the supermarket, then there's also an opportunity. There's a market there for, hey, there's some people who just might want to get out of the house. How do we make that more interesting?
Yeah. Well, Paul, I don't mean to cut this short. I could talk about this all day, but I do have to run. I have something scheduled right after this. But do me a favor. If you can, go ahead, get into your car, see how it drives on its own. I'll speak to you in about 20 minutes out of my divination class. I'll catch you soon, all right? Everyone, thank you for watching. I hope you guys have a great week. Paul, thank you again for joining.
Thank you.